I think that it's really important, for the sake of transparency in the time that we're living in right now, to get as much information out to the public as you can. The transparency puts the public in a position to judge who's telling the truth here. And I think that that's really the most critical thing. It's a brilliant move on the part of the prosecutors and the police in this case.
At the speed of social media, the controversy was joined around the globe within hours after a confrontation in Boston between the FBI and a suspected terrorist ended in gunfire. And the death of the suspect, tweets originated in Oakland, California. A man claiming to be the brother of the suspect said his brother was on the phone to their dear father at the time of the shooting and that he was shot 3 times in the back by authorities. Of course, because it's on the internet, it almost immediately became fact to millions. The only trouble is, it wasn't true, not based on any known fact, and authorities in Boston took an unprecedented step to combat the fraud. So let's get to work. Joined first by noted media commentator and author of Femme Evangelical, the Modern Girl's Guide to Good News, Reverend Jennifer Crumpton, along with the founder of BigGovernment.com and current editor at the Breitbart News Network, Michael Flynn. I thank you both for joining us. And Reverend, I'm going to begin with you first time on this one, simply because what happened here was frightening in the speed that this went around the globe when this imam in Oakland said, shot in the back. This is the and I can't breathe, he used there. But would you not agree that the feds, the authorities in Boston did not only the right thing, but they're starting to blunt some of what we get from the extremists? They showed the video to groups there. They're going to show it to the family, and they're going to release it. This is how you stop this, or at least try to slow it down.
Ed, absolutely. Transparency is key. In my previous work with a non-governmental organization that worked on countering violent extremism, our strategy #1 was absolutely to engage religious communities, to engage the public, to engage other social groups within communities in order to help combat violent extremism. It's absolutely key.
Mike, let's look at it from another aspect here, because you have one of the imams who saw the videotape said he still wasn't convinced the details provided by the authorities are confirmed by the video footage. So while this is the right thing to do, you're trying to fight the extremists. Let's be very frank here and let's get real. This is not going to stop anything. These sort of lies and this fraud will continue, and this is an ongoing process.
No, it is, and I think it's important that beyond just the issues here, it is a political tactic a lot of people use to just immediately blame the cops and law enforcement. And unfortunately in our country, the media assumes the cops are in the wrong and law enforcement are in the wrong in these situations. That's a strange thing that's happened in our country. And hopefully actions like this, releasing the video and showing that they had more than enough cause to shoot this suspected terrorist, will try to rebalance that situation.
Let's get to some balance here on the political side of things, because, Mike, I'm going to stay with you. And this is something that has social media, has the Newsmax website, has everybody talking, where the president, according to former Obama advisor David Axelrod, once said to him that I am the closest thing to a Jew to ever be president, has ever sat in the office. Now, first of all, let's just deal with this. Everything is said politically, but don't we have to take this in context of what was said, Mike?
I'm sorry. I don't even know what to do with that story. I mean, I really don't even know what he means. And one problem
well,
here
apparently what he was doing here, Mike, is they were talking about the fact that he doesn't like Israel, that he is not on Israel's side.
His policies are undermining Israel and the security of Israel every day. And this idea that somehow he's a Jew? I mean, I just...
Well, no. Let's be honest. The closest thing to a Jew that has ever sat in the office. And again, he's saying, I'm not anti-Israel, I'm not anti-Semitic. Look, I'm not trying to make apologies for the president here, but we do have to point out that this is a politician, and these people spit out some of the dumbest things you've ever heard every single day.
No, it is, but also...
Well, Ed,
Go ahead, Mike, go ahead and finish. I'll get to you 1 second, Reverend.
All right.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, it's this identity politics that who you are, where you're from, dictates your policy. I mean, the idea that his policies against Israel can't be bad because he relates to the Jewish people. No, I mean, look at the policies themselves, regardless of how he identifies himself.
Reverend, I think that's really what a lot of people are very angry about here, and that is what the president has done in the past with regard to Israel, and to say something like this just seems so phony.
Well, you know, the statement was alleged in the article that I read, and I'm glad the writer of that article actually let me know up front that this was propaganda by saying that Obama is a Jew like George Wallace was a black person. You know, so it's very hard to take some of the statements seriously around the reporting around this, but I think it's pretty obvious that potentially in context, this statement was about the fact that Barack Obama is the first minority president elected in the United States. And the Jews are a minority in our country as well as around the world, underrepresented. I have the feeling that that's probably, if he really did say a statement like this, what he was referring to. But I think he also, as the president, has to be a little bit pragmatic about the policy. And people criticizing his statement that what Netanyahu wants right now is not something he can really get from the players in the region at this moment was really not against Israel per se. It was more a realistic way of looking at and assessing the situation and determining how to move forward.
Let's go ahead and move forward then on intelligence factors and also the security of this nation. The Obama administration, here we go again, they want to use part of a law banning the bulk collection of U.S. phone records. They want to restart the bulk collection of U.S. phone records. They say this is just to sort of swing things and kind of take care of the mid-ground here until they get to actually giving it over to the phone companies. All right, Reverend, look, this gets confusing to people from A to Z here right now. The bottom line is here, do you feel any safer, and do you think that the Obama administration, regardless, is going to do what it needs to do, what they feel they need to do in order to keep America safe, even though it might be illegal?
Well, and I think a lot of Republicans were on his side on this. Look, I think that a transition period for a domestic surveillance policy is probably a really good idea. I don't think 6 months is all that long to reinstate in order to change over the way these protocols work and figure out how to do the best job with what we have in a new system, especially with ISIS lone wolves who are inspired by ISIS here in our country, as we've just talked about in Boston. I think we have to be really careful about how we roll this situation over and make sure that we fill in all the gaps.
Mike, I think that's a very good point here, because you're still looking at a gap period time, and we don't want to lose any possibility of losing one of the bad guys out there.
Yeah, but with all due respect, you don't transition your way to violating the Fourth Amendment. You know, the courts have ruled that this program, the mass collection of data, is unconstitutional. I'm sure it's inconvenient and there may be a gap, but you can't do it. And the idea that we're going to have a transition period to try to sort out the law, I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I don't think you can do that.
But do you think then what the administration is doing here is just trying to get as much as they can, as long as they can, the courts be damned?
Of course they're trying to do whatever they can, the courts be damned. That's kind of their tenor. But you know, you have a situation. Look, we were talking about Boston just now, and there was the very tragic thing a couple of years ago, the Boston Marathon bombing. The U.S. intelligence community was warned about the Tsarnaev brothers by the Russian intelligence and others, and they did nothing. So this idea that the government just keeps needing to collect information when they're not even acting on the information they have outside of this data collection, I mean, that's the real story here. Because they're collecting this data doesn't necessarily make our country safer. It's just something they do because they're government and they feel they have the right to do it. This program was never authorized by Congress. It was never the intent of Congress. The Obama administration just took it and ran with it. A court has slapped them down. And no, they don't get a transition period to continue violating the Constitution until we sort out the law on this. That's just not right.
And the beat goes on. We're all out of time, but I'll tell you what, I have a feeling that we've not heard the last of the NSA. Certainly, I hope we haven't heard the last from Reverend Jennifer Crumpton and Mike Flynn. I want to thank you both for joining us. We'll do it again real soon. Continuing right here on MidPoint, let's go next to the dark secret. We're talking about secrets here with the NSA, but what about a dark secret in the American military? And they do not want us to talk about it. Next on MidPoint.